Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of our series, Where Do I Start? I'm joined today by my colleague, Cara Joseph. Hey, Cara, how's it going?
Hi.
Cara and I both work at Acuity HR Solutions, which is located here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We're an HR consulting firm, and we specialize in HR projects, recruitment, training and development, and workplace investigations. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can visit our website at www.acuityhr.ca. So today we're going to be talking about some of the most important areas that you want to consider as part of your hiring process. There's a few areas that people often discount, especially when they're considering hiring for entry and intermediate level positions. Sometimes speed and expediency is really important in part of these hiring processes, but there's certain areas that you definitely don't want to discount or forget about, and Kara's going to talk to us a little bit about them. So Cara, you do a ton of recruitment work for Acuity, and you've seen a lot of different clients over across a number of industries. I'm excited to hear about these because I know some of these are a passion point for you that we want to make sure that we help our clients with, but also that we impart this information on people that maybe are new to the hiring game, and maybe they're hiring for the first time as a new hiring manager, or alternatively, they might have done this a lot, and these are going to be some good reminders for those folks as well too. So, Cara, let's talk about the first area that you feel is often forgotten when it comes to placing importance as part of the hiring process.
Yeah, so the first area I'd say that I often see get forgotten in the recruitment process would be phone screens.
All right, phone screens. Okay, so for people that might not be aware, Cara, what is a phone screen? Especially when you're considering an entry-level or intermediate position, what is that?
Good question. A phone screen is essentially a mini interview before you bring the candidate in for their official interview like you would in person. So it can be really short, 15, 20 minutes long. It can be longer if your conversation is going well, but essentially what you're doing is you're calling the candidate that you're interested in ahead of time, and you're going to ask them a series of questions. And it's a perfect opportunity to assess the skill set of the candidate ahead of time to ensure that they are a fit for the role that you're hiring them for. So for example, if you are hiring for a payroll clerk and it's an absolute must that you're bringing someone in who has payroll experience, ask them and, dig into a little bit of what their experience has been to date, what kind of roles they've been in previously, and how it matches with what you're looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. What sort of questions, if someone's doing a phone screen for the first time, what do you recommend they ask? What are they spending their time on with this person?
Yeah, so I'd initially start with get to know this person, ask them about their work history, ask them to date, what have they been doing, where have they been working, and also check in to see why they're looking for a new role now. What's sparked the change? What's encouraging them to try something new or apply to your organization? And then it's okay to also throw in other questions that maybe, that you're just curious about. Like, ask them what their most significant accomplishment is. Ask them when's the time they've made a mistake. Questions like this, you can dig in a little bit and understand a little bit more about your candidate and based on the answers that they share with you.
For sure. No, absolutely. And I know that some people, when they consider or they hear about what a phone screen is, they kind of say, well, wouldn't I do that in the interview? Isn't a phone screen? Is that the best use of my time? Is it a waste of time? What would you say to that?
Absolutely. You're bettering your time. It's so useful. You're saving yourself time at the end of the day. If you're taking the time, the 15, 20 minutes, like I said, to call someone and have that phone interview ahead of time, and it doesn't go well, because I've had many and they don't always go great. But that's 15, 20 minutes that I lost instead of the hour plus time that I had brought in someone to assess right away, like, no, they're not a fit. And it's your time is valuable, but also the candidate's time is valuable too. So I find using a phone screen ahead of time, it's respectful and it's just smart.
Absolutely. And you're cutting down on logistical timing, someone to book an interview later, get them to come in. You're taking time out of your day to make that interview happen. And if you know right away that, hey, this person isn't going to be the fit, then you're definitely saving time down the line. So yeah. I completely agree. Good. Okay. What's another area that you find that organizations and hiring managers overlook when it comes to hiring on the entry level or intermediate side of things?
So another one, it's more intangible versus tactical, but when it comes to an organization and hiring manager sitting down in that interview process, it's also having that mindset and thought, what sets me apart? Am I giving this candidate an exceptional experience? Because at the end of the day, when you're sitting down with a candidate and you're assessing their skill set, they're also assessing you in return. And it's a two-way street when it comes to interviewing. And that's a piece I feel like we often forget as hiring managers. So sitting down with that person, what are you doing to set yourself apart? We have seen organizations, or I've seen leaders do things like go the extra mile. Are you going to give a tour of your facility, if that makes sense? If it's on the floor, let's see what the floor actually looks like. Some organizations will include like promotional items. Another one, and one of my favorite ones that I like to see from leaders or hiring managers, pardon me, is having the leader join the interview. Who is this person going to be sitting with and reporting to, and actually meet who they're going to be working for should they be the successful candidate?
And why would it be important to kind of have them assess that part too, and have them thinking about who they're going to be working with?
Because at the end of the day, the candidate is assessing not only the organization that they're going to work for and the role that they could potentially obtain, but also who they're going to work for. Because it's a candidate's market, and there are, for a lot of roles, there is a lot of choice out there for candidates in some roles, of course, but you want to, as an employer, put your best foot forward to ensure that they want to work with you too.
Absolutely. Yeah. That mutual fit is so important, and definitely one of the pieces that gets overlooked. So I think people focus, like you said, sometimes more so on the tactical side of things, and they don't think about the pieces that are surrounding the interview process. And communication with candidates, I know, is a huge piece as well too, that we commonly interact with or encounter rather, when it comes to areas where the hiring process could be improved. I'm Absolutely. Sure you can think about times, Cara, where candidates have not been successful, not necessarily on their account, but more so because of the way that the hiring manager was handling the process. Let's talk a little bit about the communication side of things and how that impacts that fit assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is so important when it comes to the relationship that you're building between the candidate as the hiring manager. And what I mean by that is not just general conversation. I mean the after part. So when you have interviewed with someone and you know what, you really like them, but you're not diligent in your time to get back to them, you're not responding in a meaningful way, in a time set, and if you want a good candidate and you want to get this candidate and lock them down, you need to be respectful of their time too, to ensure that you can get them in the role quickly. I've seen it so many times where a hiring manager will put off their time or put off getting back to a candidate, and they really like them, but things pile up and we all get busy. But at the end of the day, they waited too long and another opportunity came up for a candidate and they jumped at it because they were looking for work and it came first.
Yeah. And like you said, in some particular positions, there is choice out there for certain candidates. So if you're not having a good interview conversation when it comes to the post conversation that often happens, and you're not getting back to people in a timely manner and making sure your process moves forward, you're at risk of losing someone that could be a really beneficial fit for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the phone screen portion of the process, and then more of the intangible mutual exploration of that fit and assessment, kind of coming from both sides, and a reminder to hiring managers that the candidate is also assessing you. What's one more area that often gets overlooked as part of the recruitment process that hiring managers really need to make sure they have eyes on?
So the final area is, I keep saying this, like the most important, but they're all so important to me, is reference checks. Reference checks are, for anybody who doesn't know, reference checks are after you've chosen your successful candidate, but before you put the offer, you would call ideally 2 or 3 references, someone that they have either worked for or have a working relationship with in the past, could be a coworker, to assess and dig into a little bit of what their past experiences with their previous organizations have been like. So often I see hiring managers skip this step, and they'll just go ahead and put the offer forward, and then 2, 3, 4 months later, they're calling me up and they're saying, "Oh, Cara, it's not working out with ABC person, and we need to cut ties." But then when we look at the situation and we assess it, we realize you didn't a reference check initially to see what you could find out about this candidate. When it comes to reference checks, there's a lot of people will also say, like, "Oh, they're a waste of time. Why would I do it?" Of course, they're only going to give people who would say good things about them. And yes, 90% of the time, I would say you're right. But it's also up to you as the hiring manager, up to you as the person who's going to be bringing this person on to the organization. Do your due diligence. Ask those questions that you really need to know the answer to, and you may find something you didn't expect, and good or bad. But if you take the time to dig in, that is when you're going to find the really important pieces.
So often people might find excuses as to why reference checks aren't helpful. What would you say would be a reason that a reference check process would fail, that someone's maybe not considering as to why they've not had success with references in the past?
Yeah. Well, I guess the first part would be, if you're treating your reference like a checklist, you're doing it wrong. Absolutely, you need to go in prepared, have your list of questions that you want to ask, but you're having a conversation, and be attentive to what you're hearing. Listen to the answers that you're getting. If the tone changed or something you thought was a little bit underlying in their answer, ask them, dig in a little bit further and say, you mentioned this, can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then really try to uncover what was being said.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another one too would be, check to see who your references that you've obtained, who the references are. If they're a grandma or an aunt, those aren't going to help you. They're not going to be beneficial. You're not going to get meaningful information from these references. You want work-related references. It could be a peer, it could be a leader, someone in a working capacity.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. If someone is coming across someone who's saying glowing things and it's from a character perspective, that's often where people probably think, references aren't worth it. But if it's a work-related capacity, there's more context there, and you're hopefully going to get some meaningful information.
Yeah,
absolutely. Good. No, that's great. So I'm kind of hearing based on the things that we've talked about, we talked about phone screens, and then we talked about assessment of mutual fit from the candidate to the employer side of things. And then also the reference check side. We kind of have, especially from the phone screen and the reference check side, those are kind of like the pre and post interview. People know about the interview side of things. They know they have to ask questions. They know that's typically an important part of the hiring process, but you kind of have 3 interviews that you're really needing to focus on when it comes to entry-level positions, and your pre-interview being your phone screen, and your post-interview being your reference check. And of course, throughout the entire process, you're making an impression on candidates, and needing to make sure that you're consistently communicating and ensuring that mutual fit is seen from the candidate side as well too.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. Well, thanks so much for talking to me about this, Cara. I think this is really important information for people, again, to remember and to go back to as part of their hiring process. Are there areas in the 3 places that we talked about that you need to shore up in your hiring process? If this is something that you're new to and want some support on, again, you can reach out to us via our website, www.acuityhr.ca. We have recruitment services that span everything from full search to customized search processes, and we also do recruitment training. So this is certainly an area that we're happy to support in, and we look forward to seeing how these sorts of talks benefit your organizations. Follow us on LinkedIn for more great content.